So good afternoon, good morning, good night, good evening, everyone, depending on where in the world you are at. This is another session of our Python coding challenge. It's kind of like a low-key introduction stage where we're covering the basics and foundational concepts in Python. So far, we have done quite a bit of things. I'm going to start off with a review of yesterday's class. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. I'll make sure I know where we started out, where we left off of yesterday. Okay.
Slicing of
Right. Good
slicing.
deal. Yeah. So very quick overview of what we covered yesterday. We kind of went over the data typings, the data types in Python. We talked about quite a few of them, mostly integers, floats, and complex. And essentially, we're going to be going down this list in some sort of summarization as we go along. Then we kind of talked about variable assignment in addition to typing, kind of understanding what type of information is contained inside of a variable. Then we saw how we use the type method or function to check the data type for contents of a variable. Then we had a question midstream about why, when I was printing things, there was this class piece being shown in addition to the class type. I kind of explained very loosely what the object-oriented Python programming, which we're going to be learning in our advanced classes, kind of looks like. And I kind of introduced you guys to the object-oriented world, where we kind of think of things as objects, and a collection of objects together tend to form a specific class. So you can always think of a class of objects as basically objects, methods, and whatnot that are kind of related, kind of perform or serve a higher function or a higher order that is symmetrical or kind of similar. So for example, the car class will be built of objects that can only be found in a car, such as lights, wheels, seats, etc. And the tree class would have things such as roots, branches, stems. And then you'll have what these things can do. For example, roots, they can suck water from the ground and nutrients, and branches, they can increase the surface area of the tree, can hold leaves and things of that nature. And the stem being the main artery of the tree. Lights in a car, wheels in a car, seats in a car all have very distinct functions. So we talked a little bit about that. We went further in, kind of gave you an example of what a complex numeric type is, because we understand the integers and the floats are pretty easy to remember, but the complex one is always a little challenging for new folks. So we did say that any sort of algebraic expression that you might come upon tends to be considered a complex form. And we're going to get to see how this works in real life. We mentioned the idea of random library within Python. I also did discuss a little bit about what libraries are and kind of why we use this same keyword import. And so we did see how, for example, to generate random numbers between 1 and 200 or 4 and 100, whatever the distance you want, and kind of how that is done here using the random library. I also did show some arithmetic functions or mathematical functions with variables. So we were able to learn about additions, subtraction, multiplication, division. And then, like in this instance, we are using exponential functions here. So like the exponent of 5 to the power of 2, which give us 25. Then we introduced Python strings for the third, fourth, maybe fifth times. There's a lot of focus on strings because of the strings in Python have a very unique behavior in that they're both considered an array as well. So we're not going to show how that works. The assignment of value to a Python string is pretty straightforward, as you can see. It can be just done in a single line. But there are also times when you have a lot more to say, kind of a larger input to give your Python string object. So for example, in this case, we have our string, and we're providing a multi-line large input that kind of spans not just one line here, but also kind of flows into the second line, and it could even be larger. So we learned about using prefixing this with these single quotes, 3 of them in succession. And this can also be double quotes, just as long as there's a set of 3 in succession. By succession, it means one after the other. Then we looked at the idea that Python strings are arrays. And for that matter, we can always retrieve portions of the array based on the positional, the index position. So we said like Python is 0 index language, and that when we start our count, we'll start with 0. So the T in this instance here, T will be position 0. Then position 1 has the value H. Then position 2 has the value E. Then position 3 will be this black space or kind of white space that you have in between words, and so on and so forth. So we kind of show here this idea of slicing, or basically getting a slice of a string object by passing a value, a positional value such as 0, to give us the value I. Went through some sort of loop, and we said how we loop. The structure of a loop begins with a for, the keyword for, and then it can be for anything in our anythingness. So anythingness. So for example, in our case here, we have for character in our string. It could be something else. Notice that we tend to name these things here kind of like in an intuitive manner, so that you know kind of what you're dealing with. For example, it's very right to say for character in letters, right? Or for letter in words. That all makes sense. So when you're naming these things, you kind of want to be cognizant of that, kind of help you also help your teammates that you're working with to make things clearer. Okay, so we did see how this works out. It just basically goes through the records and prints out the characters. Understand that the white space is also being counted as a character. We also learned about the len function of the len method. And we kind of learned that the len method is just basically the short form for length. Every time you use the len method, you parse a variable, and that variable will be interpreted as a string, and it will count the number of characters within the string. Okay. Okay, so for example, we can print out the length of this one here if you wanted to, just same manner. Then we also looked at the in operator when working with strings. It's basically saying, if you look at the sentence that I have, do I have this word, this letter, this character? We also kind of showed how we can use the not in to negate the same thing we're doing here. Okay, so today what we're going to do is continue on from where we left. We're going to start here with concatenation, which is kind of what we left off of. I'm basically taking a slice of our string. So if I was to run just this alone, I may have to restart this because I don't think Gemini is working yet.